Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow is the one-year anniversary of the 2012 election. In his column, Don Braid talks about the Premier, and he states that, quote, "She rarely admits a mistake. Indeed. She won't even concede that promises made in the election campaign have been broken," unquote. Mr. Speaker, one such promise was to bring full-day kindergarten. Promise made, promise broken. To the Premier, why did you promise full-day kindergarten when you had no intention of honouring that promise? Was it just a ploy to win votes? Why, Premier?
Honourable Premier.
Well, actually, Mr. Speaker, whether it's our Minister of Education or our Minister of Human Services talking about this issue, we will talk about the fact that all-day kindergarten matters to Albertans, Mr. Speaker, because we're fundamentally committed to ensuring that early child development is a foundation for the future. Mr. Speaker, we already see in over half of the jurisdictions in this province the opportunity for all-day kindergarten, and as we move forward, we are transitioning more and more programs to that, Mr. Speaker. Local school boards are involved in making these decisions that are appropriate for their families. We'll continue to support it, Mr. Speaker, and to suggest that we're not going to get there is completely misleading, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Albertans don't need this Premier to talk. They need her to walk. Mr. Speaker, in the election, the Premier promised to end child poverty in 5 years, revisit minimum wage and end all poverty in 10 years. And yet, after 42 years, this government doesn't even have a working definition for poverty, nor any money budgeted to end it. 1 year has gone by, more than 70,000 Alberta kids are waiting to be appropriately fed, clothed, housed and brought out of poverty. Promise made, promise broken. To the Premier, why are you playing politics with the most vulnerable members of our society instead of helping them instead?
Honourable Premier. Minister of Human Services.
Speaker, the presumptions of the honourable member are absolutely absurd. First of all, there are no magic wands. Nobody promised that everything would be done on day one. We have a 4-year mandate, and we will fulfill that 4-year mandate. The honourable member says there's no definition of poverty. If he went back to the estimates at which his member from Calgary Mountain View raised the same issue, he'd understand that social issues belong to the community and have to be worked with the community. There are many definitions of poverty. We are working on making sure that there's common cause in this province so that we actually do succeed in achieving these very, very laudable goals.
All right, we now have hecklings and interjections by the Liberals and by the New Democrat opposition, and even a few from the government side. So again, I ask, could you please all come back to some sense of civility and decorum before this gets escalated to the point where I have to interject even more? Honourable Member, your final question.
Mr. Speaker, this minister talks about magic wands. Our kids are getting lumps of coal. During the election, my daughter and her friends at the University of Alberta read election slogans where the Premier told students she'd walked in their shoes and promised to prepare Alberta for the future by investing in their education. Instead, we've seen the most draconian cuts to post-secondary education in decades, and even cancellation of step funding. Promise made, promise broken. To the Premier, how exactly did you decide that chaos, fear and uncertainty were what our post-secondary institutions needed to prepare our young people and our province for the future?
Honourable Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think we see a lot of examples of spreading chaos, fear and uncertainty, but they're coming from that side of the House. Nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, we're very aware of the fact that post-secondary funding in this budget makes up more than 5% of our budget, Mr. Speaker. This is an area where we have a responsibility to ensure that taxpayer dollars are being used effectively for research and innovation, to train our students, Mr. Speaker, and not wasted on administrative costs, Mr. Speaker. Everything that our minister is doing is working with presidents and boards of governors to ensure that taxpayer dollars are being spent effectively. You know, Mr. Speaker, we've seen incredible investments in the past 10 years, and we think we can ensure that this continues.
The Honourable Leader.